Half of US consumers are now using meal delivery. Domino's are helping independent restaurants, and Deloitte releases a restaurant consumer survey. That's all ahead on this week's Monday Minute. Monday Minute works like this. We're going to ask each other a question about 5 of the top headlines from the last week. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, well, let's get started. Meredith, you have the first question this week. Half of US consumers are now using meal delivery, says Bloomberg's second measure. So where do you think this is going to head from here?
Yeah, this is fascinating data. For those not familiar with Bloomberg's second measure, they're looking at credit card data to understand how consumers are behaving. And the main headline is that half of Americans are now using one of these third-party platforms, and that number is up versus 2020. So even as life started to open up and return a little bit to normal in 2021, you had even more people using delivery services than the prior year. So that shows increased consumer adoption. You also had people spending more. So those who had been using it before continued to use it more. Very interesting. I think that all tells us that we're headed in a direction of continued adoption and more delivery and more off-premise. Then the other thing that's kind of hidden at the very bottom of this article is a statistic about cross-shopping across platforms. And consumers are, I would say, multiple users of different platforms. So for the most part, they do cross-shop. The largest delivery platform, DoorDash, has the most amount of loyalty, with 61% of consumers using only their platform, and then it kind of falls off after there. But most consumers cross multiple platforms, which I think is interesting. I think, we have previously focused on the 61% at DoorDash that are very loyal and talked about, well, because you have consumers who love a particular platform, that's a reason to be on all platforms. But to see that some consumers are shopping across platforms and increasingly shopping across platforms, I think tells us that consumers are looking for the best access that they can get at the best prices that they can get. And they're willing to take the time to look across platforms for those things. And, you've said often in your off-premise reviews, Carl, that sometimes you will find a restaurant will turn off a certain platform or all the platforms and only have people coming to first party, things like that. So I think what's happening is consumers are reacting to that and saying, oh, the fees are lower over here, I can get a deal over there. This platform's turned on, that one's turned off. There's more drivers available on this platform, so therefore I can get things in a shorter amount of time. And they are really looking for the things that they care about most, rather than maintaining their loyalty to a single platform. All right, next question for you. Dispatch Goods received $3.7 million in seed funding this week. So they are a packaging company, but they are a unique packaging company. Tell us about the difference.
Yeah, this is a nice segue from the end of your last answer there, because one of our 2022 projections is about how the consumer is going to grow ever more demanding with their off-premise expectations. And of course, that is to do with the food, and it's about the way it's ordered. But it's increasingly becoming something about the subject of waste and packaging sustainability, and that becoming more prevalent in the consumer's minds. That way, you can understand why Dispatch Goods have got this $3.7 million worth of funding. I think it was last month. But it's really an exciting area because, in my opinion, it's really quite underrepresented and not a huge amount of innovation that we're seeing in this kind of area of the restaurant ecosystem. Customers will want to do their thing for the environment where they can, but for those that aren't incredibly focused about it, they'll do it if it doesn't majorly disrupt their world too much. And that's why this Dispatch Goods is offering containers for restaurants to use as part of their packaging. And it kind of makes sense from that standpoint. But because the customer gets the item and they can leave that item unwashed on their door on a pickup day, it's easy and it's green, right? So it's a very kind of complementary, value-orientated service that they're doing. Now, they're wanting to build a platform which is going to enable them to go through 10 to 15,000 food packages per week. They've already got 50 customers like DoorDash and Imperfect Foods. So don't be surprised if a marketplace shows interest in this because they have drivers. So could drivers collect dirty dishes? You heard it here first if it happens. Now, we talked about Loop Store and GoBox in the book. Loop Store are now working with Kroger and Walgreens on a similar idea, but for CPG items, whereas GoBox in Portland offers a similar service, but requires customers to drop off the items at a GoBox location, which is a bit of friction. Now, one interesting differentiator here is that the material that GoBox uses is a polypropylene container, whereas Dispatch uses a stainless steel container. Also, I've not seen anyone in this space yet address the whole thing around branding your first-party channel. So great for the environment, but remember that piece around encouraging the customer to return. Those with a sustainability-focused mind will likely seek out restaurants that use a service like this, but those that perhaps aren't as sustainability-focused, they're still going to need those prompts for first-party customers to learn about the restaurant's first-party channel, as opposed to always going through third parties. So an interesting one to keep an eye on. I'm really excited about this, and we'll see how successful they are after this great raise. Okay, our third question today is about Deloitte. They've released some results about a consumer survey that's asked about restaurant behavior, and the results were pretty intriguing. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I love this. I always love hearing directly from the consumers. There are a survey of 1,000 consumers in this Deloitte study talking about the restaurant of the future. A lot of it was very focused on off-premise, and also given the COVID environment, some on safety as well. But because of everything that's been going on the last 2 years, 61% of respondents say they now use delivery or takeout at least once a week. So this has really become a widespread phenomenon, and I think the longer all this uncertainty goes on, the more ingrained this behavior is going to become. We're just going to see that number continue to increase as it has increased from prior year. 64% of the respondents said they do not expect to go back to pre-pandemic behavior within 6 months. And so, part of that might be forecasting out how long they expect the pandemic to last. Part of that is probably them realizing that while they learned this behavior during the pandemic, they don't want to forget it anytime soon because it really is easier. We continue to see that speed matters the most. 75% of respondents don't want to wait more than 30 minutes for food. And as we talk about in the book, no one orders food when they're not hungry. So you have a bunch of consumers out there who think, oh, I'm hungry, what should I get? And the first thing they're looking at is time to delivery when they place an order online. 79% of consumers said they would order from a ghost kitchen. A figure that has been rising dramatically over the last 3 years. And I think, for you and I, Carl, when we started at Kitchen United, no one had even heard of a ghost kitchen. And so now to have consumers say that they are willing to order from them is an absolutely incredible change in consumer behavior in a very short amount of time. And then finally, 40% of off-premise orderers prefer first-party apps versus only 11% who prefer the third-party. So this is fascinating as well because I think that tells you there's, first of all, a big chunk in the middle who kind of switch back and forth depending on what they're looking for. But a whole bunch of people out there who are absolutely willing to engage on those first-party apps, to engage directly with the restaurant, and to have a better experience with those restaurants that they really value. All right, Carl, next one's for you. So Domino's doing a great thing by helping local restaurants. They are purchasing $100,000 of gift cards to be used not at Domino's, but at local independent restaurants. So fascinating. You have another perspective on this, so why don't you tell us what you think is happening?
Yeah, first, let's take a look at the commercial itself and see what Domino's has been doing.
The past year and a half has been incredibly brutal.
We literally thought it was over with.
A lot of things change by the minute.
Just plan on your plan not working.
For local restaurants, it's not been easy at all for the past year and a half.
Friends of mine that own restaurants were struggling because they were having to reinvent themselves overnight.
Suddenly we couldn't have people in the restaurant.
And so with takeout comes the apps. We offer delivery through third-party delivery apps. Unfortunately, you kind of need to use them.
The fees are just too much.
They take a huge chunk of our bottom line. They actually take our bottom line like 5 times over, and all of that comes out of our pocket and goes to them.
Then they charge some exorbitant rate to our customer.
They were just taking advantage of us and of the customers.
So the best way that customers can support local restaurants now is go back to those restaurants directly. Don't use delivery apps.
To encourage our customers to do that, Domino's franchisees purchased over $100,000 in gift cards from local restaurants, and we've been delivering those free to our customers.
We love that Domino's has supported other restaurants and driven their customers to these mom and pops that can really use the help.
They can come in and order here at the counter. They can place an order over the phone, online.
So I'm going to stop that there because it goes on for just another minute or so. Now, on one hand, you could say incredibly altruistic. Domino's have done something really nice to support independent restaurants at a time when they really need it. But there's another side to this as well. And, you know, I'm also getting tired of it, Meredith. Yes, the fees are high. Yes, it doesn't make sense for restaurants when you look at it at an absolute profit margin perspective, but at a marginal profit perspective, it does. And the marketplaces are not going away. They are not. And they've saved many restaurants from going under during the pandemic. And Domino's, who have an awesome first-party channel, who set the standard in many ways, knows this. They also know these marketplaces are a great way for the independents to compete and to compete against the big chains by acquiring new customers. And so if a customer wants pizza but don't know what pizza to choose, they go to a marketplace. If they want a Domino's pizza, then Domino's is there for them. The trick is for independents to get found on a marketplace in the first place and then delight the customers, create a great experience, and then convert them over to their own channel and away from those fees, while also still using those logistics that a marketplace can offer, which of course Domino's doesn't need to utilize. So yes, altruistic to a point, but similarly, I think we have to get away from this language around third parties being bad for restaurants. Domino's are a great example of how to win in delivery, but it took near bankruptcy for them to force them to change and adapt to this new opportunity a number of years ago. So, you know, I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's really important just to remind everyone that, at least from our perspective, third parties are an important, not the complete, but an important part of the overall ecosystem of off-premise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Okay, our last question this week is about our friends over at Sweetgreen. They're helping to get our New Year's resolutions off to a good start with their new subscription service. Excited by this one?
Yeah, you know, I love this. I think they're not the first to do a subscription. They're not the only ones to announce a subscription service nationally this month. But what I love about it in particular with Sweetgreen, because they are so health oriented, is that this is a great time of year to get people to resolve to eat more salads and then to build the habit. And what the subscription service does, because it gives you $3 off a day, is help you build that habit. And the more regular your usage of the program becomes, not only the more money you save, but the more likely you are to continue that behavior well beyond January when your resolutions start to fall off. So I love this. I love this promotion and the way that they've gone about it. I think it's going to be very successful.
Okay, well, that's it for this week on Monday Minute. As ever, we really appreciate you being able to join us for this. Hopefully you've enjoyed this week's edition. Please leave your comments below, any questions that you have for us, and we'll try and get to those in a future week's episode. But in the meantime, Happy New Year to you, and thanks again for watching. The Monday Minute is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on all our social media Learn.Delivery channels. Thanks for listening.